Hi everyone, so recently I've launched my watercolor brush pack and today I will share how to paint grasses, bushes and trees and also this magical mystical forest. First, let's paint some grasses. First, use the blending wash brush to paint 3 circles and fade it out at the top. Then use the well-behaved liner to paint on some grasses. Smudge with the soft water smudge brush. Lock the alpha for this layer and then paint different shades of green all over the place. Create a new layer and repeat all the steps again. Paint 3 circles, sketch some grasses and then smudge it out, and lastly we will lock the alpha and change the color once again. On a new layer, use the dry liner to sketch in some grasses. Then use the dabbing brush to fill in the bottom. Smudge this out, lock the alpha and change the colors. Create a new layer for one last time and drop in some grasses using the dry liner. Go back to the first 2 layers, erase the bottom with the dabbing brush and then smudge lines out with the dabbing brush as well. Now let's paint some bushes. Use the bleeding wash brush to paint a circle. Lock the alpha, use the super wash brush to shade the sphere. Use the dabbing brush to smudge the edges. On a new layer, use the bleeding wash brush to paint the shadow shape. Smudge the edges with the dabbing brush, lock the alpha and change the colors. On a new layer, use the dabbing brush to paint from dark to light. Finally, create one last layer and use the well-behaved liner to paint in shapes of leaves all over the bush. Now let's learn how to paint a watercolor tree. First, paint the branches and then create a layer beneath the branches layer. Use the bleeding wash brush to paint the shape of the tree leaves. Smudge the edges with the dabbing brush. Paint the shadow shapes on this same layer and then smudge the edges out with the dabbing brush. Now use the dabbing brush and paint near the shadow areas. Use the well-behaved liner to sketch in some leaves in the shadow areas. Create a new layer and repeat the same steps with a darker color. Paint the shadow shapes, smudge the edges with the dabbing brush. Repeat again for a darker tone and then use the dabbing brush to paint around the shadow areas. This time you can change color from dark to light, fill in the entire tree, and finally use the well-behaved liner to paint some leaf shapes. Lastly, using the eraser and white bloom in your eraser to erase away some highlights for your tree. For the mystical forest, use the superstar wash to drop in a pink to blue gradient. Next, use the salt brush to drop in some pink and blue textures all over the forest. Now use the salt brush in the eraser tool to erase the ground and the hole in the sky. Use the superstar wash brush to paint in pinks for the ground to complete the base layer. Create a new layer, set it to multiply mode and use any sketch brush to sketch in background trees. Alpha, lock the layer and then paint the entire layer white. Then after that, use the bleeding wash brush to paint a light blue. Create a new layer and set it to multiply mode, then use the dabbing brush to paint in bushes in the background and also the leaves in the background. Once you're done with the background, create a new layer and use any sketch brush to sketch in trees for the midground. Lock the alpha and set it to multiply blending mode and then paint the entire layer with white. Then after that, use the bleeding wash brush to paint it with a darker shade of blue. Create a new layer beneath the mid-tone layer and then use the dabbing brush to paint some pink leaves. You can paint bushes with a darker pink, and when you're done, create a new layer. Use the well-behaved liner to paint the deer. Go over one more time to get the shadows. Paint the cast shadow in red and then create a new layer. Sketch all the main trees. Turn on alpha lock and paint the entire layer in white. Then change the blending mode of this layer to multiply mode. Use the bleeding wash brush to paint over this layer. Create a new layer beneath this main tree layer and then use the dual color brush. Pick 2 shades of red to paint the leaves of the tree. Once you have the base of the tree leaves done, change to the dabbing brush to add leaves individually. Don't forget to paint the bushes as well. Gradually add darker leaves and bushes. Don't forget you can also add blue bushes as well. Once you have felt that your tree leaves are done, create a new layer on top of the main tree layer and then change this layer to clipping mask. Use the dabbing brush on this layer to paint leaves that are overlapping the branches. Then duplicate this layer and merge the 2 layers together. This will make your tree leaves more opaque. Now create a new layer above all the other layers and use the superstar brush. Use this brush to add details of leaves, branches, and bushes all over your painting using all the colors that you've been using so far. For the tree, add dots of dark colors to make it look like the branches are behind the leaves before adding all the other red leaves. The more time you spend in this stage will determine how good your painting will look, so take your time and paint beautiful leaves and shapes and patterns. Then flatten all your layers into one. Use the dabbing brush to erase away some highlights. Once you're done with the dabbing brush, change to the superstar brush and erase away even more highlights for leaves, for the sun to shine through. And then after that, we are done.